Some ideas in gaming just feel inevitable, like they were always meant to be. The dream of a massive, sprawling digital battlefield where you aren't the hero, not the chosen one, but just a soldier in the epic wars of Star Wars. For years, that was a fantasy we all had. You could watch the movies, you could read the books, you could play with the action figures, but you couldn't live the battles. You couldn't feel the ground shake as an AT-AT stomp past, or that desperate thrill of holding a command post against an absolute tidal wave of clankers. That promise was just out of reach. Then, in 2004, a game showed up that was pitched as the definitive answer. It wasn't just another Star Wars title, it was sold as the ultimate Star Wars sandbox, a digital playground that would finally let us step off from the scripted rails and into the chaotic, messy, unpredictable heart of the Galactic Civil War and the Clone Wars. That game was Pandemic Studios' Star Wars Battlefront. And it didn't just meet expectations, it completely shattered them, becoming a landmark in gaming and fulfilling a dream for millions. This is the story of how a studio caught lightning in a bottle and created what many still feel is the purest translation of the Star Wars fantasy ever made. It wasn't about being Luke Skywalker, it was about being the guy next to him, the trooper who holds the line just long enough for the hero to save the day. It was all about the beautiful, glorious chaos of war in a galaxy far, far away. To really get the impact of Star Wars Battlefront, you have to remember the world it was born into. It's 2004. The Star Wars prequel trilogy is about to hit its dramatic finale with Revenge of the Sith just over the horizon. The franchise is at a cultural fever pitch. At the same time, gaming was going through a massive shift. Shooters were king, but consoles were still figuring out how to do large-scale multiplayer. On PC, games like Battlefield 1942 had laid down the blueprint for massive, combined arms warfare, but that experience was pretty much locked away for PC gamers. This was the perfect soil for LucasArts, the gaming wing of George Lucas's empire, to plan its next big thing. Star Wars games were everywhere, and the early 2000s were a golden age. We had amazing flight sims like X-Wing and Rogue Squadron, and deep RPGs like Knights of the Old Republic. LucasArts was just firing on all cylinders, cranking out hit after hit, and yet, one core fantasy remained untapped: the sheer, epic scale of the ground battles from the movies. This is where Pandemic Studios comes in. Founded in 1998 by two guys who used to work at Activision, Pandemic had already made a name for themselves building ambitious, innovative games. They just got sandbox design, the art of giving players a box full of cool toys and the freedom to make their own fun. Their work on games like Battlezone 2 showed they had a knack for blending genres and creating these really dynamic combat scenarios. So, when LucasArts went looking for a developer to bring the epic battles of Star Wars to life, Pandemic was a natural fit. The vision was simple but powerful: create the ultimate Star Wars fan's dream. The whole idea was to build a game that let players live the battles. It wasn't about a linear story, it was about creating a platform for all those countless personal stories that happen in the heat of combat. Development kicked off in late 2002, with the team taking heavy inspiration from the Battlefield series. They focused on a class-based system, wide open maps, and that seamless blend of fighting on foot and jumping into a vehicle. The marketing was a stroke of genius. Star Wars Battlefront was set to launch in September 2004, timed perfectly with the hugely anticipated DVD release of the original Unaltered Star Wars trilogy. It was a brilliant move that tied the game directly into the very thing that inspired it. Fans could go watch the Battle of Hoth on their TV and then immediately pick up a controller and go fight in it themselves. The hype was unreal. Previews from E3 showed a game on a scale that consoles had never seen before, a title that promised to finally deliver the sandbox warfare we'd all been craving. For a generation raised on Star Wars, Battlefront wasn't just another game, it was the fulfillment of a promise. When Star Wars Battlefront finally hit shelves, it delivered on its promise with a stunning clarity and focus. At its core, the game was a conquest-based shooter. On most maps, your goal wasn't just to wipe out the other team, but to capture and hold strategic command posts. You won by either draining the enemy's reinforcement tickets to zero, or by capturing every single command post and holding them down for a certain amount of time. This one simple mechanic was the bedrock of the whole experience, turning every match from a mindless shootout into a strategic tug of war. This fantastic gameplay loop was spread across two legendary eras: the Clone Wars, with the Republic's clone troopers fighting the Separatist droid army, and the Galactic Civil War, with the iconic clash between the Rebel Alliance and the Galactic Empire. All four factions were recreated with so much love, not just how they looked, but how they sounded and felt. The crisp chatter of the clones, the metallic clanking of the battle droids, the desperate shouts of the rebels, and the cold, imposing vibe of the Empire were all spot on. The real genius of Battlefront was its class system. Each side had four main roles: a standard infantry soldier, a heavy weapons specialist with rockets, a sniper for picking people off from a distance, and a pilot who could repair vehicles and hand out health and ammo. On top of that, each faction got a fifth, unique unit that added its own flavor. The Republic had the awesome Jet Trooper zipping around the battlefield. The Separatists had the terrifying Droideka rolling into the battle and deploying a personal shield. The Empire brought the Dark Trooper, a heavily armored jetpack unit, while the Rebels had the tough as nails Wookiee Smuggler. This system was just so accessible. The roles were easy to pick up, and they had real tactical depth. A good squad that balanced the anti-vehicle power of the heavy, the support of a pilot, and the covering fire of the infantrymen could completely turn the tide. This wasn't a game about being a lone wolf. It was about teamwork. It made you feel like a small but important part of a much larger war machine, and that was the whole point. And then there were the maps. Battlefront was basically a tour of the most iconic places in the Star Wars saga. You could feel the biting cold on Hoth as you scrambled through the trenches and piloted snowspeeders to trip up those massive AT-ATs. You could navigate the dense forests of Endor, dodging blaster fire from scout troopers on their speeder bikes, the sterile, rain-slicked platforms of Camino, the dusty red plains of Geonosis, the urban streets of Theed. Each map felt like its own character with its own strategic puzzles to solve. And the scale? It felt immense, especially for 2004. Geonosis in particular felt like they had ripped the chaotic, sprawling battle straight out of Attack of the Clones, a feeling that a lot of modern games still struggle to nail. But the true magic, the thing that made the sandbox work, was how seamlessly you could go from infantry to vehicle combat. At any moment, you could just run over to a parked AT-ST, or a Republic gunship, or a Hellfire droid, or an X-Wing, and just hop in. This created an unbelievable sense of freedom. A battle could shift in an instant when someone spawned in a powerful tank or a nimble starfighter. On Hoth, the battle wasn't just about soldiers shooting at each other. It was about rebels desperately trying to hold off the seemingly unstoppable AT-ATs, which, yes, you can actually pilot. This constant dance between ground and air, infantry and armor, is what really sold the fantasy. And the game gave you a few different ways to play. Instant action let you jump straight into any fight on any map. The campaign mode loosely followed the big historical events of the two eras, but for a lot of us, the crown jewel was Galactic Conquest. This mode was incredible. It added a whole layer of turn-based strategy on top of the shooter gameplay. You'd pick a faction, look at the map of the galaxy, move your fleets to attack enemy planets. Winning a battle on a specific planet gave you a special bonus you could use later, like regenerating health for your troops or sabotaging enemy vehicles. It was so addictive, blending high-level strategy with the core action and offering dozens of hours of replayability. It made you feel like a general, plotting the course of an entire galactic war, one battle at a time. Now, it wasn't perfect. The single-player campaign was basically just a playlist of multiplayer maps with some voiceover. The AI, while good at creating the illusion of a big battle, could be pretty easy to fool. And maybe the biggest frustration for a lot of players at the time was that the heroes like Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, and Mace Windu would show up on the battlefield as super powerful NPCs, but you couldn't actually play as them. It was this tantalizing glimpse of a power fantasy that was just out of reach, a key feature they would fix in the sequel. But honestly, these were minor complaints. Battlefront had captured the soul of Star Wars warfare like no game before it. It was a chaotic, beautiful, and endlessly fun sandbox that finally let us live the battles we'd only ever dreamed of. When it launched in September 2004, Star Wars Battlefront was a massive success, both critically and commercially. Critics couldn't get enough of the incredible multiplayer, the authentic Star Wars vibe, and the pure, simple fun of its sandbox gameplay. While some pointed out the weak single player and so-so AI, the general reaction was overwhelmingly positive. The game sold like crazy, moving over 4 million copies and solidifying its place as a blockbuster hit. It had perfectly tapped into the cultural moment, riding the hype of the original trilogy's DVD release to become the must-have title for any Star Wars fan. Its most immediate legacy, of course, was its sequel. Released just 1 year later in 2005 to go along with the Revenge of the Sith DVD, Star Wars Battlefront II took the rock-solid foundation of the original and just built on it in every single way. It added playable heroes, space battles where you could actually board enemy capital ships, a proper story-driven campaign, and tons of new maps and units. Battlefront 2 is often remembered as the pinnacle of the series, but it's so important to remember that it was standing on the shoulders of its 2004 predecessor. The core DNA, the conquest gameplay, the class system, the mix of ground and vehicle combat was all pioneered in the first game. The influence of Battlefront 2004 went way beyond its own sequel, though. It set a new bar for what a Star Wars multiplayer game could be. Its success proved there was a huge appetite for these large-scale, sandbox battles in the Star Wars universe, a blueprint that would be copied, rebooted, and chased for years to come. The DICE reboots in 2015 and 2017, for all their graphical horsepower, owe their very existence to the trail that Pandemic blazed. Many of the core modes in these newer games are direct descendants of the command post capture gameplay that was the heart of the 2004 classic. The story of Pandemic Studios, however, has a more bittersweet ending. At the height of their success in the mid-2000s, with hits like Battlefront, Mercenaries, and Destroy All Humans, the studio was a rising star. In 2007, they were acquired by the publishing giant Electronic Arts. On the surface, it seemed like a great move that would give Pandemic the resources to make even bigger games. Unfortunately, the transition was rough. The studio struggled under their new corporate structure, and, just 2 years later, in November 2009, EA announced that Pandemic was being shut down. The news sent shockwaves through the industry. The creators of the ultimate Star Wars sandbox were gone. And with that, plans for a true Battlefront III from the original team pretty much died. Another studio, Free Radical Design, had been working on a version that was controversially canceled in 2008, leaving behind only leaked footage of incredibly ambitious features like seamless ground-to-space combat. For years, it felt like the original saga was over, just a relic of a bygone era. Yet, the legacy of Battlefront 2004 refuses to fade away. It lives on in the hearts of its dedicated fans. For years now, players have kept the game alive through private servers and a thriving modding community. This passion is a testament to just how good the core experience is. The game was so beloved that in 2020, almost 16 years after it first came out, official online multiplayer support was suddenly restored for PC versions on Steam and GOG, complete with crossplay. This revival, along with its inclusion in the controversial release of the Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection, which was released in 2024, brought the game that started all to a whole new generation. Today, the original Star Wars Battlefront stands as a monument. Sure, it's a product of its time, and some mechanics feel a little dated now, but its core design philosophy, that focus on a massive, chaotic, player-driven sandbox, is timeless. It represents a different era of game design, one that was less about progression systems and unlocks, and more about providing a pure, unfiltered playground of fun. It didn't need a bunch of complex systems to keep you hooked. The simple, emergent joy of fighting alongside dozens of other players in an authentic Star Wars battlefield was more than enough. The story of Battlefront 2004 is a great reminder of what makes a game truly special. It isn't just about graphics or complexity, it's about capturing a feeling. So what are your favorite memories from the original Battlefront? Was it taking down an AT-AT on Hoth, or a desperate last stand on Camino? Let me know down in the comments. And if you're enjoying this trip down memory lane on the golden age of Star Wars gaming, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into the classics. Star Wars Battlefront 2004 was more than just a game. It was a promise fulfilled. It took the grand, sweeping battles that has mesmerized moviegoers for decades and put them right into our hands. Pandemic Studios created something that understood the fundamental appeal of Star Wars, the idea that epic stories aren't just made by legendary heroes, but by the countless ordinary soldiers fighting in the trenches. They gave us a sandbox of blaster bolts, screaming TIE fighters, exploding walkers, and let us create our own cinematic moments. The gaming world has changed a lot since 2004. Games have gotten bigger, more complex, and graphically mind-blowing. But there's a purity to the original Battlefront that is still so potent today. It's a game built on one simple, powerful idea: letting you live the battles. For the millions of us who charged across the fields in Naboo or held the line on the ice plains of Hoth, it was, and in many ways still is, the ultimate Star Wars sandbox. It wasn't just a great game, it was a dream made real. Remember, stay active, stay hydrated, and may the Force be with you.